I haven't done a project like this for a while, so since I was going to be doing a larger than that project, I figured I'd do a brand new tutorial. So I'm helping somebody with an Alice in Wonderland birthday party, and we want the white rabbit to be 30 inches in height. That is longer than a standard Cricut cutting mat. Also, since we're cutting this out of cardstock, most cardstock you buy at the store is going to be 12 by 12 sheets. So how are we going to do this? We're going to make each one of these parts of the rabbit fit on a 12 by 12 piece of cardstock. That means we're going to kind of turn them into a puzzle. Let's start up with the shape of a square because our Cricut cutting mat is a square. So here's a big tip. Make your square 11.5 by 11.5 inches. This is because even though your standard Cricut cutting mat is 12 by 12, the Cricut software automatically takes off a quarter of an inch on each side. So that means your actual cutting space is only 11.5 by 11.5. I could just start randomly placing these squares to do the slicing, but I try to be a little bit more precise than that. I am going to use the position of the XY coordinates to exactly place my squares. The best way that I can think of to explain using XY coordinates is to think about playing Battleship when you were a kid. You positioned your ships and called things out by the letters and the numbers that were mapped out with this grid. Our XY coordinates are the exact same thing. So if you want something to be at the B4 section on the grid, you have to line it up by those coordinates. So if I put this at 40 inches, I go copy and paste. So 40 plus 11.5. So now I have two, and this edge lines up perfectly. So I'm going to take both of these. I'm going to select on both of these and say align to the top. So now these are perfectly lined up. I'm going to group those. So now I can duplicate that grouping and put it down here. Okay, so let's start in with the rabbit and let's turn off all of the layers except for that black. I'm going to need a total of 3 of these groupings of 2 blocks. So I'm just duplicating to do that. Then I can do the math for the XY coordinates to make sure the space is right. So now if I select all these and put the top one at 10, that means the next one would have to be at 21.5. And the bottom one would be at 33. Okay, so now I can select all those and say align to the left. I could then make this one big grouping that now works all together with this. And I say arrange to the front. So this is my grouping of squares. I can see them over here. Now, if I wanted to, I could change the colors of these. So I can say that one's red and that one's orange. The only reason I'm changing the colors of these squares is so that when I'm going through this tutorial, it helps you to see them better, but also I can say you're going to select the blue square and the black background of the rabbit. So now to cut this black piece into those little puzzle pieces that I talked about before, we're going to use the slice tool. So you're going to hold down your shift key so you can select more than one thing at the same time. Then you're going to select the black piece and the red piece and hit slice. Then keep going back to find the top black piece and then grab the orange square and hit slice. This project is a really great example of why I like to select things from my layers panel. If you're clicking on the actual layers on this right-hand side layers panel, you know what you're picking. Versus if you pick on the screen, sometimes you think you clicked on the orange square and you really clicked on the green one. I am always experimenting with new things, and doing these squares in these rainbow colors was kind of a new thing. I usually just keep them in the gray color. But I thought, when I'm doing this tutorial, it might really help for people if I'm saying, click on the red square, click on the orange square. At one point, I actually thought if this doesn't work out like I want it to, I can just delete this part of the video. But I actually kind of like it now because now these black ones are going to be the ones I want to keep, and these colored ones are what I'm going to want to delete. So I can literally go through the whole layers panel, deleting anything that is a color and only leaving what is black. So that makes it really easy for me to figure out what pieces do I need to keep and which ones do I need to delete. So I like that and I'm going to use it more often. Oh, and technically I didn't even need to use that one. Okay. So you're like, Sean, it looks the same. I know it does because it's all black, but if I changed it all to pink, you would see the lines, the cut. Okay, so that's our back piece. So when it cuts, it's going to cut into all these smaller pieces that all fit on a cutting mat, and then we're going to tape it together. That's going to be our background. I'm going to make those all black again and group those together. Now let's start to turn on some of the other layers for the white rabbit. Right now, we're going to start off by looking at just the white pieces for the rabbit. You can see in the layers panel, I've circled this icon that's telling us there's a warning. The warning says that this image is too big to fit on one cutting mat. The reason it's saying it won't all fit on one mat is because that's scattered all over. So it's looking at all the white as one big piece. So if I go and duplicate it, and then I use contour, and I could have sliced these, honestly. I just want to show you another way to do things. Contour allows me to turn on and off pieces of the design. So I'm turning off all of these. So I just leave his feet. So that's still too big. So we'll have one foot on this one and one foot on this one. Okay, so now each individual foot piece fits. So on this contour, I can turn off the feet for that one. It doesn't matter if things get placed exactly correctly in here because we're going to cut them. Okay, so now let's separate the hands. I use duplicate to make a second copy. Go contour, turn off the rabbit face, love these little inner pieces. So the hands, it's still thinking the overall thing is 21 inches long. But if we contour, Turn off that one. And for this one, we'll do the opposite. See, now each piece fits. So now I can contour out pieces for here. And this portion of the rabbit is still too big. So we are going to have to use slice on his cute little bunny face. But let's see where we can make the most sense. So to do that, I'm just going to add another shape. And then we'll make it 11.5. And I'm going to rotate this one and do it like this. So it kind of slices if through his hairline. No pun intended. Hairline of the hair. So what I'm showing here is that you can either use slice, like a lot of the larger the mat tutorials would show you, or you could use contour to divide things up. So now this one, yep, that's okay. So both of those are fine. So now if I take this, well, I could get rid of this guy. Take all of that and put them back in place. Now what I can do is go back through and find all my white pieces, and holding the shift key down and select them from the layers panel, I can then group them together. I could also turn off the black layer so I could just select all the white and hit group. So now I'm going to go through that exact same process with all the other colors in the design. So I will focus on one color. That's just how I stay organized. And then I'm checking that layer to see if all of the pieces fit on one cutting mat, or if I need to use either slice or contour to separate those pieces so that each individual piece fits on one 12 by 12 cutting mat. And once I have it all done, this rabbit turns into a giant puzzle piece that we're going to have to put together later. Now, I'm not going to show this whole process for all of the characters that I'm doing. We're just going to jump forward in time. All right, so now I have each of those. So now, if I go save, when I go make it, it's telling me something is still over one of the black pieces of Alice is still over. So what I will do, so what I'm going to do is just go back in and edit the pieces that are telling me they're too long and that they're extending into a size where I would need a larger. I could use an extra long mat, but the problem would be finding paper that would be that length. So this is kind of a nice way to check your work, because when you click make it, if it says, oh, you're going to need the extra long 12 by 24 inch mat, you can scroll through on that left-hand side and look at all your layers and actually see which ones are a 12 by 12 square and which ones might be a 12 by 24. And then you can go back and just play with, edit, slice, contour, whatever you need to do to those pieces to get them to fit correctly. All right, so now I can see I didn't get the warning saying that you're going to need an extra long mat. If I scroll through on my layers panel on the left here, I can see everything is on an individual 12 by 12 mat. And actually, if I wanted to, I could scroll through here to figure out how many sheets of cardstock I needed. For example, there are two that are red, so I will need to go purchase two sheets of red cardstock. So I kind of can do a shopping list off of this also. The next thing would be to cut these. I'm not going to show the cutting process because it's going to be long, but I will show you assembly of Alice. Now I know I said I'm not going to show all of the cutting, but I did want to show some of it, just so you can see how this process goes and how long it does actually take to cut all these pieces. I am cutting the pieces for Alice, and you're going to see that I am cutting one cutting mat and then moving on to the next. And it really does take a long time. And then once I zoom out, you will see all of the Alice pieces laying on my craft table, and you'll see me start to assemble it. Now you can see I've had the pieces laid out, and I'm taking all of the black pieces and flipping them over and just taping them with a clear tape on the back. And I'm lining up the edges and just going through this one piece at a time to really make sure I have everything aligned. And I'm doing this again on the back side of the black pieces. And once I have them all attached, I will flip the whole thing over. And now I can start lining up where all the other elements are going to go. I like to line everything up first. I just lay everything out so I know I have placement accurate on the black piece. Then I take one piece off, add glue or adhesive to the back, and put it back in place. And this kind of helps me so I can line up each little piece one at a time and try to hide those seams. Now, you might notice I have a helper in the craft room, And this is the mother of the birthday girl that's helping me out. So we're just taking turns going back and forth, applying glue. We're using the Zig two-way glue pen, and then sometimes we're using a tape runner. But then as we go along, we kind of look at sections and make sure that we have all of the pieces kind of centered and positioned right for each section. And then we'll glue that in and then come back and make sure things are lining up nicely before we move on to another section. As a sort of finishing touch, I did come in and give Alice a little definition with a pencil on her lips, and then I grabbed some blush and added some rosiness to her cheeks. And now she's all ready for the party. Before you go, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below. I love to hear from you.